Hey everybody, this is Lisa Harper, and you're listening to the Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey podcast. This is the show that changes the conversations we have with our loved ones about aging and life decisions. Let's have more honest conversations where we speak the quiet parts out loud. Today I'm joined by Scott Fischer, a nationally recognized leader in senior care and one of the driving forces behind professionalizing the referral and placement industry across the country. Scott earned his Bachelor of Science in Nursing from Arizona State University and brings over 30 years of experience in healthcare, spanning nursing administration, education, mental health, and home health. Since 2000, he's dedicated his work to senior care and dementia support, helping families navigate one of life's most emotional and complex transitions. As the co-founder and past president of the Professional Association of Senior Referral Specialists and a founding board member of the National Placement and Referral Alliance, Scott has played an instrumental role in shaping ethical standards, national guidelines, and certification programs for referral and placement specialists, work that now reaches over 33 markets across the U.S. In 2003, Scott founded Options for Senior Living, guiding thousands of families as they search for the right assisted living or long-term care solutions for their loved ones. And now their daughters have joined the business, continuing this as a true family legacy of care and connection. Scott's mission extends even further through Senior Resource Connectors, an organization he co-founded with his wife Stacy to educate and support adult children, those who, like him, are navigating the challenges of caring for aging parents. I'm so excited for you to hear Scott's insights on navigating aging, supporting families in transition, and leading with both heart and ethics. Scott, you've dedicated more than 3 decades of helping families navigate the complex world of aging and senior care. You've built organizations that really center on ethics and compassion. And I'd love to start with your why. So I welcome you, and then I'd love to start with your why. What first drew you to this work, and how did your journey in healthcare lead you to focus so deeply on helping families?
Yeah, Lisa, thank you. And it is a real honor to do this with you today. I'm getting to know you a bit over the last year or so, and I love the work you're doing. And so thanks for inviting me in. As I was working through the years, prior to all this, I was a behavioral health nurse, Lisa, and I was working with long-term mentally ill kids. And I was in an accident with one of the kids who was gotten combative and aggressive, and we were holding him down, and I ripped all the ligaments in this right hand and this wrist and had a fusion surgery, the first of now 4 surgeries on this hand. Sometimes when life throws that at you, right, people say, a window closes, God opens another one somewhere else. Well, that getting away from working with kids, I couldn't work with that combative, agitated adolescent any longer. I started to take my focus, my psychiatric training, towards families that had dementia, and their loved ones were suffering from particularly the psychiatric symptoms of dementia. And I just loved it. I loved being the eyes and ears for the physicians. I loved to navigate with families. Now, at that time, I was in my late 30s and only 40, but I got to use my clinical experience in a new way that was really exciting for me. And then my heart was, I always wanted to own my own business, Lisa. And if I could blend my desire for entrepreneurship with making an impact, then dang, I thought, oh my God, I finally got what I was after. And at 40 years old, I opened the options business for that very reason. Do my own thing, carve my own path out, match it with having an impact with families and help them navigate this. And senior living is just a complex mess. So that's my why. It's a long way to say I love what I do, and I love that I get to be my own guy, make a difference while I'm doing it.
Yeah, because it really does make a difference. And for those listening, I'm not sure if they're not in the senior world, if they're not what we call the senior economy, right? That space, they may not understand what placement is or know what it is. So could you give us a definition of what does placement mean when they hear that?
I appreciate that. The placement and referral industry refers to a group of professionals that represent families, although we don't work for the families. We get paid a commission by the receiving senior living communities, homes, properties, and we represent the family very similar to like a realtor would and help a family find the right, residence. We work with families typically on behalf of their aging loved one, and we show them various options of choices based on their priorities. And we schedule tours, represent them, help them locate the right solution for their loved one who can no longer stay safe at home. So a free service to families. We get paid by the senior living communities.
Oh, just for clarification, I think a lot of people blend, independent living, assisted living, skilled nursing facility. And I always say the only time we use the F word is when we do say skilled nursing facility. It's in the word. Other than that, these are communities where people live. These are their homes. How do you summarize those different options to someone?
I typically start with the concept of a big umbrella term, and I call it just senior living. Senior living is all inclusive to include what you identified as independent living, assisted living, memory care. Skilled nursing is kind of off to the side on its own. I typically use or recognize skilled nursing like rehab. They've had an illness and a surgery and injury. If people go there, their insurance pays for that recovery so that they can go back to whatever supervised living or congregate living. Independent living is social, kind of hospitality driven. Assisted living is intended to have that hospitality social component, but blend it with care now. So they have their own care staff on board. Everybody gets a personalized assisted living care plan. And so whether it's just simple things like giving them their medicines or reminding them it's mealtime, to more complex services and showering and bathing and dressing and all that activities of daily living support that people need. Assisted living comes into the middle. Memory care is really just a subset of assisted living that specializes in caring for people who have more profound memory loss, need more supervision, more direction in their day-to-day activities. Maybe they're wandering and they need a secure environment.
Okay. And then for, here in Charlotte, we have CCRCs and life plan communities. How do those differ?
The CCRC properties are typically what we refer to as a high entry fee, right? So people would pay hundreds of thousands. We've got property here that they're doing new units in Scottsdale, $3 million, $3 million to buy in. And be really clear, you're not buying anything. You're entering in an agreement, a contractual agreement for healthcare that includes healthcare. You're paying today's prices for tomorrow's healthcare. You're also paying for an incredible amount of luxury and ambiance and environment and culture and all that kind of stuff. And so people go into the senior living in that regard. Usually you go in as an independent living person, and then you progress through their levels of care, assisted living, maybe memory care. They might have a long-term care unit for their skilled. For people that have the highest care needs, they might have a long-term care unit where they provide that in their skilled as part of their rehab and skilled programs. There's also what we call rentals, and the rentals are very similar. Sometimes they're campuses where all those services are available, but the entry fee isn't there. You pay a one-time, maybe a move-in fee, a community fee, maybe something equivalent to the first month's rent, and then you would pay a monthly rental. Be sure to understand that when you do the CCRC thing and you pay your $400,000, you still have a monthly on top of that. The rental doesn't have the big entry fee, has a community fee, but also has a rental, usually higher, but it's still a monthly rental. So people decide, do I want to go down that road and put all kinds of money into my senior living, or do I just do a rental style property? I have a lady that I'm going to see on Saturday. She's looking at both. She can afford both. So we're considering just this very issue with her when I go out and do my I've talked to her on the phone, but now I'm going to go out to the house and visit with her and her husband about all this.
And I think that's such an interesting way that you phrase that. The way you say you're paying that money up front is for your future healthcare needs. How does that pair with your personal health insurance in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good nuance to understand. So when you sign up for and go through the entry process to go into the CCRC, you go through underwriting. And so you're typically dealing with a type A or a type B property. And there's a type A is very high scrutiny of underwriting. Type B, a little more relaxed about their guidelines. But if you've already got a diagnosis of something neuro going on like Parkinson's or dementia, they probably don't write you. So it's underwriting. Well, why underwriting? Because it's connected to an insurance policy that pays for skilled nursing days in the future. So there's where you're paying for today's dollars for tomorrow's health care. So let's see how it plays out. So there's your question. How does it blend with your health insurance? Let's say you're living you bought into the community, you're in the CCR, husband and wife, and Joe has a fall, breaks a hip, right? Joe goes to the hospital, gets his hip fixed. He goes to the rehab center, gets his 20 days of Medicare rehab, and they say, okay, Joe, you can go home. So he goes back to the CCRC, but instead of going right back to his independent living apartment, Joe could use another 2 or 3 weeks of nursing care. So when he bought his contract, his type A contract, he's got 90 lifetime days in the healthcare center. He can now go get an extra 14 of them and get that extra boost of recovery and care and support before he goes back to his apartment and resumes his life. So they pay up front for those 90 days of healthcare in the skilled nursing on their campus. That's the plan that they bought. That's really the plan that they bought. So they use their insurance for the first 20 days. Then he uses his prepaid 90 to take care of the other 14 that he gets when he goes to the skilled for his extra boost of recovery time.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So it kind of tag teams with your insurance.
It does. You dovetail off of your insurance, and now you use some of your prepaid days. I don't know if it's a national standard. Typically here, our type A properties, one with the highest stringency, the most expensive to get into, are you buying 90 days in the contract. On the type B, 30 or 60. I think it's only 30, but they're usually a little less, and they're less strict on the underwriting requirements.
Okay, and that's just interesting because I think people hear these, these large lump sums being to secure your spot on top of a monthly rent that's due. And I think people don't understand what that equals and what kind of, reassurance, I guess, that is to your health needs in the future. Because as I say on this podcast, that we are obsessed with anti-aging, that nobody talks about the fact that we are aging. And so I want this to be like an education on aging. That's just a friendly spot to come and get info. And I do hear people just throw those lump sums around like, that is a lot of money. That is a great way, I thought, though, that you summarized what that equals. A lot of us are living in different places. Our parents are one place, we're in the other. How do they find somebody, state laws and rules, all these guidelines? There's so much to understand. Could you give like a overview of what those first steps would be? I guess, if you are looking in another city, like how do you go about choosing a placement professional?
Well, that's a big one because here in Phoenix, about 1 in 3 of us have our parents with us. Now, I had to move my mother from Ohio to be here. Phoenix, like Florida, is a very high snowbird state. We have a high concentration of retired folks. They started in their 60s and 70s coming here for the winter, going back to Green Bay, Wisconsin in the summer, and then coming back. Well, they're now here full time. We have 160,000 80-year-olds in Maricopa County, where I live now. 160,000 80-year-olds. So you mentioned in my bio, I was part of the launching of a group called the National Placement and Referral Alliance, the NPRA. What that did was that created a trade association establishing best practices and a code of ethics for people that do what I do, because we're an unlicensed and largely unregulated industry. So there's a lot of good players in the field. There's a lot of jokers. There's a lot of jokers in the deck. The NPRA has some stringent guidelines and best practices that agents adhere to voluntarily. You could go to their website, npralliance.org, and do a review or a member search. And if you're in St. Louis or you're in, you got a mother in Salt Lake City, find out if there's an NPRA agent in that community. So that's the place to start looking. One of our best practices, Lisa, is the other answer to the other question. We do an assessment. Well, what is that? Well, we're not clinicians. Now, I'm a clinical person, but most of us that do this are not clinical, meaning we're not a social worker, we're not a nurse, right? I'm not a therapist of some kind. And so clinically, I learned how to do a clinical assessment in nursing school. The average guy doesn't. So we have a protocol of questions that we conduct an intake. That's what it's, we call it an intake. And our best practice requires it that I do a quality intake when I go out and see everybody. So besides the basic demographics, where do you live and I ask what are the basic healthcare needs? Can I see your medication list? That gives me a clue to what's going on with them. What are your presenting issues that are driving you or your loved ones towards senior living? What diagnoses are on the table? Then we got to talk about finances. Then we got to talk about location. Then we got to talk about sustainability in those finances too. It's not just how much money do you have and make, but how, if we select a direction to go to that I bring you solutions or options for, can you sustain this for the next 3 to 5 years for your loved one's journey? And so we get into the weeds with people. There's also then investigating family dynamics, right? You got kids with different opinions about mom stuff. You might have different opinions about how they should spend mom or dad's resources or assets. Some kids have different grounds for motive. Sometimes you got husbands and wives that were second marriages. That's my situation. Now I've got 6 kids. I have 3. Stacy has 3. I'm hoping Stacy and my 3 kids always get along so that when daddy's not doing well, they're not having this, they're not each other's throat. We get into some pretty complex things with families in order to solve the problem and get them a good outcome. That's a long answer to say we get into a lot of things for people. We really do. The best agents get into all that.
I was going to say it gets personal really quick, right?
Very
I mean, you're
personal.
looking at everything. And I think it's like the longevity risk and that sustainability analysis. I was reading that recently, that the possibility that this is the worry of everyone is that what's that possibility of you outliving your money? The longer we live, which that's what's happening right now, right? Modern technology, everything moving towards the super agers. If you have a handful of decades after retirement now, we're talking 30, 40 years. How do you plan for that, right? So you guys are there getting in really personal information with people so that you can see everything though.
Yeah.
You have to be presented all the information so you guys can help guide them too. And one thing I want to point out is that I think this comes as a shock to some people because they'll maybe be on a waiting list somewhere and independent living, let's say, or a CCRC, and they have this waiting list. And, a lot of times we say they're not on a waiting list waiting for a unit to become available. They're waiting on a waiting list because they're not ready yet, right? Like the name of the podcast, they're not ready yet. But then something happens, like a mature life event happens, which, AKA an urgent crisis. And now they don't qualify for that independent living. I think I've heard you say this, that we have to explore the what happens, like in quotes, what happens, like what happens when, what happens if. And those are the conversations that we need to be having. And again, the adult kids listening on your commute to work, and just, these thoughts are circling in our minds. So what are some just encouragement, ways to bring up conversations? Because this what happens, those are the things that we need to have the answer from our loved ones.
Well, can I use my own parents as an example, and maybe that helps bring it
Absolutely.
to life? So everybody, I think, hopes that you go to sleep. Like the end of your life comes in your sleep, no pain, no suffer, no decline. Just one day I'm talking, one day I'm gone, right? And you know what? My dad had a rough life, and he lived a rough life. And he had that experience. His wife called me and said, your dad's gone. Just like my dad. Just very similar to like my life with my father. My mother is doing the long slide, going down a longer road. And so nobody wants the long road. Nobody wants to suffer. Adult kids have the paradigm in our head that our parents are our parents. And so our parents, though, when there's not an acceptance that this is inevitable, like aging is inevitable, death is certain, undefeated. I told a guy not too long ago, he's a Phoenix fireman and he's used to rescuing and being the hero, right? Firemen save everybody. He's trying to save his mom from Alzheimer's. I'm like, Alzheimer's undefeated, man. And he just started to cry. I cried with him. I'm like, I know what you're doing. You can't win. We have to go with this, right? And so when we come alongside our loved ones and we help them go with it, It's an emotional journey. We have to come to grips with our own mortality. I'm doing that with my own mother right now. She's still not ready. She kissed death right on the lips 3 weeks ago. She's crying out delirious, let me die, let me die. And so I talked to her this morning about, okay, now that you're home from the hospital and the rehab, we got to improve your electrolytes, and you can't drink so many soft drinks, and you want to get healthy. Let's do some different healthier things. Let's add some protein to your diet. Here's a Boost or an Ensure. Ooh, I don't know if I'm going to like that. I'm like, that's irrelevant. They're irrelevant. But she's not. She wants to live life on her terms, Lisa. She doesn't want to
I
say,
know.
my body's failing. Now, my mom and her sister have far outlived their parents because of medicine and great medical intervention. And they just saved her butt 3 weeks ago. But here she is still negotiating like what she's willing to do. And you go, I'm her son. Now, that happens all the time with my clients, but now I feel their pain even more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know a lot of us, that's how we got to where we are right now, those personal experiences. And, I know you said one time, I'm a bad day away from, like that news, right?
It just happens. I do a talk, and when we were in Wichita, I shared a little bit of that talk, the storm clouds on the horizon. And I'm launching my own podcast this week, and I call it Don't Let Haboob Hit You in the Face. And so Haboob is this desert storm that I was showing you pictures of. This storm we had this summer was 65 miles wide, a wall of dirt a mile high, and it swallowed all of metropolitan Phoenix over a couple hours. And then behind it comes these crazy rains and windstorms behind all the dirt. It's Haboob.
Wow.
So that's a metaphor for life. Like you're just doing your thing, and then bam, dad strokes. Bam, mom breaks a hip. Bam, the diagnosis for Alzheimer's disease. And then you're like, boom, it's Haboob. And you're scrambling to solve the problems or address the issues. And that's my message is, please talk to me before the crisis. Let me help you with an aging plan. Let me help you. Maybe before we have to do the placement, I can help you with other resources. Before we do the placement, let me help you with the right things to help you stay safely at home or manage your life so that you have a resource if and when the crisis hits.
Yeah. And this phrase has stuck with me, and it's like acceptance of aging and watching our loved ones age and the things that are going to be presented. We don't know what they are. We don't know if it's an urgent crisis or cognitive impairment. We don't know what the decline is, if it's sudden. That's like the roulette table of life, right? But acceptance isn't joy. And I think we have to get over the fact that everything has to be joy when we accept it. Acceptance isn't joy at this part of life, it's readiness. It's
Mm-hmm.
readiness, it's preparation. And that's what I'm so passionate about, is getting these conversations going so that when people are talking, they know the difference between independent living and assisted living. And they know when they see the CCRCs or life plan communities, what is that? Go find out information, because the reality is 90 some percent want to stay at home and age in place, and that's wonderful. However, even aging in place, that means where you're safe and where you can sustain and have life with dignity. That may not be at home. And we have to be ready and have those conversations. So, do you have any final thoughts or encouragement for families that, like we say, are not ready yet, but know they
Yeah,
need to
well,
start the conversation?
you just triggered something, and let me tell you what you just triggered. So, if you're familiar with the Alcoholics Anonymous movement, they've been helping alcoholics for years and people in recovery overcome their disease or addiction. They have a book, they call it the Big Book in AA, and there's a chapter in there with one sentence that's always been a life changer. Acceptance is the answer to all of my life's problems today. Doesn't mean you have to like it. It's acceptance, just what you just said. You're aging. We're all aging. Get over it. We have to accept it and prepare, right? And so when I can step into acceptance, then those other issues settle down. It calms life when I'm, and that's what I said to mom. I was explaining to her, when you come home, we're going to enroll the help of hospice care. That doesn't mean you're dying. That doesn't mean we're going to load your coffee full of morphine and put you to sleep. We're not. This is not the end. I need a comprehensive medical plan around you to help you the rest of the way. She goes, well, what's the downside? I go, there's no downside. It's your acceptance of where you are. So if you're listening to this and you're an adult kid like me, love your parents enough to have the conversation, even when they're prickly about it. Come back to it, take it in steps, and talk to them about this concept of acceptance. As a family, I want to love you, Mom. I want to help you through it. We're in this together. You raised me. I'm here to take you through the end. And that's where I want to help families get to, is that tender spot where they love each other and they address this through the hardest last season.
Yeah. And that's me too. I want people to remain the daughter or the wife, or, there's so much in these, like you say, prickly is a nice word for some of these things. And it's like, we have to have the conversations. And that was beautifully said about just starting the conversation, the words to say to start a conversation, because like you said, this, and you may have to walk away from it and come back, but it's the moment of, hey, let's talk about this. And it might go on for a year. It might go on for months that they can't, or they're not ready, or they say something and that gives you a little bit more insight. But that's their acceptance process too, right? So we have to do it together. It's the journey together. So Scott, where can listeners connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Well, my website, optionsforseniorliving.com, I talk to families literally all over the country because their parents are here. And so I'm happy to help. I'm also happy to be a resource. If you're looking for a guy like me in your city, check the npraalliance.org or give me a ring or outreach. You can reach me through the website. There's a contact page button. It'll email me a note, and I'm happy to visit and respond to anybody. My work with the NPRA has given me a pretty big network of professionals. Relationships with people like you, Lisa, through the Senior Home Coach platform is expanded that even further. And so that's how you find me. I'm around, and look for our new podcast. Don't let Haboob hit you in the face. We're going to have similar tough conversations with professionals as they're encountering it in their businesses with people like myself.
Great. And we'll have all that information on the show notes too, so that people can have access to that. And Scott, I thank you so much for being here today and helping us understand senior living options. And thank you for being part of the Senior Home Coach movement too, this grassroots effort of everybody working together. So appreciate you, and hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Lisa. It's been great to talk to you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me on Not Ready Yet, Curating Conversations for the Aging Journey. If something in this episode gave you clarity or the courage to start an important conversation, or offered a new way to look at things, I hope you'll share it with someone who might need the same encouragement. Remember, navigating aging isn't something we have to do alone or in crisis. With love, logic, and the right tools, we can face what's next with confidence and connection. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you're feeling generous, leave a review. It helps others find the show. And just a quick note, the information shared on this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not intended as a substitute for medical, psychiatric, legal, or other professional advice. Always consult a qualified professional for guidance tailored to your unique situation. This is Lisa Harper, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.